Hello and welcome to On Point. My name is Mirna Duron and today we'll be talking to you about the power of an image. Is a picture truly worth 1,000 words? And what is it about a photo that makes people react? The most memorable photos are the ones that create an emotional response. Photojournalists are storytellers who give the ordinary person a first-hand experience with world events. The primary job of a photojournalist is to bring the truth to light and leave a lasting visual impression in people's mind. The following photos are considered controversial and may be graphic for some viewers. On Point's Erica Sims has more on the story.
Thank you, Myrna. Here to join us today are CSUN journalism professor Stephanie Bluestein and LA Daily News photographer David Crane. Thank you guys for joining us.
Thank you.
We're going to be talking about the power of an image. We're going to look at a couple images, some recent and some later on in history. The first image we're going to talk about is by Niflor Demir. It's the image about the young Syrian boy that was found on the Turkey beach. The photographer said that she hoped that the picture made a difference. And do you guys think that she should have used the photo? Stephanie, I'll start with you first.
Photos with children are always difficult. Any dead body photo is a touchy subject, but certainly when it's a child. Most people have a connection to a child. They're a parent, they're a grandparent, they're an aunt or uncle, and it really hits them hard. Having said that, though, this photo really made a difference, and it put this crisis on everyone's radar. And people are starting to pay attention and perhaps donating money, doing what they can. I would say yes, it should have run.
And David, how do you feel about it?
Well, as a photojournalist, you never edit while you're shooting. So you're in a scene like that, you shoot. And that's not my job for the paper I work. It's not my job to edit on scene. That's the job of editors, and we have a filter. That's why there's a filter with newspapers. Now, I don't know, I think she worked for Reuters. So, you know, she probably, gets sent first to Reuters. Some editor at Reuters has to decide whether to release that photo to all the sources or not. So, you know, I look at things at news from that perspective. So I don't make that decision whether to run the photo or not. An editor, and that is one of the problems with social media now. I mean, stuff gets put out there right away, and there is no filters we're talking about. That said, you know, like you say, it's made a difference. It's a powerful image. There's been a lot of powerful images from this whole event, though. I mean, you know, that really, I came up in an era where all those kind of decisions fall on an editor, and editors sit in boardrooms and make those decisions about what goes and what doesn't go. We used to call it the Wheaties test. You know, whether something is suitable to run a newspaper, you know, for a family newspaper or periodical or wherever you're going to run it. So, I guess that's from my perspective. That's how I look at it, and I think it's, you know, I think sooner or later that would have gotten released somewhere because of social media. That's what's changed over the last 10 years. There is really no filter, and those kind of images go out there right away.
Now, do you think it would have made a difference if it was a man who took the photo? Do you think no?
No. I've worked with women and men. It wouldn't matter if an alien took the photo. It doesn't really make any difference. What matters is the final image.
Right.
And I think it's more powerful because it is a child. There's nothing more sad in anyone's world than a dead child, whether they died from an accident or a disease. And to see that image is so powerful, and I think more powerful than if it were an adult, a man or a woman lying on the beach.
Great. We're going to move on to our next image, which is a picture by Matthew Brady. It happened during the Civil War. It's soldiers laying around. Of course, they're dead, unfortunately. Why is this picture of a dead soldier acceptable 150 years later? Do you think it would be as acceptable now that it was then? Go ahead, Stephanie.
It's remarkable that it was run back then. I'm not sure about how acceptable it was from the public's perspective. Photography was new then, and perhaps there was a curiosity with the public. this was the first time that they had ever seen anything like this, the public, and seeing these dead bodies, and they could see the impact of war, and it made it more real for them.
David, anything you want to add?
Yeah, that was, you're like at the break. That's the first time people saw war images. Before that, there was Roger Fenton, who shot the Crimean War overseas, and he shot, what made a difference there with that was he shot a lot of the soldiers who were wounded, lost limbs, legs, arms. That made a huge impact on society over there in the UK. But that was before this. Roger Fenton didn't have anything in the battlefield. He'd have like pictures of cannonballs. But with the Civil War, the technology was there. Matthew Brady went around this little darkroom wagon and shot this stuff as he saw it. You know, I don't know. I wasn't back there then. I don't know what the perception of the the pictures at the time were. I'm sure it wasn't great, and I don't know what impact. I mean, I'm so far removed. I don't know what impact it would have had at the time. I mean, communication was still different then. I mean, it was everybody get a newspaper. You didn't have social media. You had nothing like that. So people got information way after the fact. That being said, you said now, being so many years later, any kind of image, once it's been removed, I think a certain number of years, people get kind of, I don't want to say numb to it, but there is more of an acceptance. I mean, you look at 9/11. I mean, when it was happening, it was just horrifying. And now we've seen the images so many times where you get you get a little bit numbed to what actually happened there. But I think that's true with especially with photography. That happens over time.
Now, do you feel like we should kind of bring out pictures like this, even though newspapers and places like that don't want us to show pictures of dead soldiers? Do you think we should start? I mean, just to show the effect of war, should we bring them out more often? Either one of you, whoever wants to jump in first, can go ahead.
Well, I mean, as a photojournalist, absolutely. I mean, I think that it's important that people know what's going on. And I do think there's, I prefer black and white because there's a little bit of a disconnect as opposed to color. And I think that helps in some way in relay the story and it makes more of an impact, at least to me. Maybe it's just my eye. But I don't like to edit. I don't want to see things edited. I think that people need to see what's going on. It's important, whether it's horrible or beautiful. I mean, it's important. And it's upsetting. I've had situations in my career where things have been edited and not run, and I was upset. You get upset because you're there, you feel the impact of the moment, and then, oh, we didn't feel this is appropriate to run. So, but that's why editors get the big bucks. They make those decisions.
And anything you wanted to add to that?
My only concern is running too many dead body photos could desensitize and perhaps has desensitized the public.
Yeah.
Oh, there's another one, even though it is a different circumstance, different situation, but then on the other side, you don't run it, and then you're not really telling the truth, letting the public know what's going on.
Yeah, there's also, we have, like, especially on a day-to-day basis, if there's somebody who was killed in a situation, we have to we have to think about the families and relatives and people who knew that person. So we wouldn't run it for that, but those kind of pictures for that reason, because you don't know. You'd hate to have a relative find out that's my brother, on page 1, and not knowing yet. That's awful, and I wouldn't want to see that happen. But as time goes down, as you remove, those people have passed away. You don't have those kind of situations. I mean, but I think they still have an impact. I mean, the Civil War is terrible. The pictures the pictures that really still disturb me today are pictures from after World War II, but from the concentration camps and the bodies that were. It's horrible, and it just makes me turn away even today. So, it depends on the situation, what happened.
The next image that you're going to see is graphic. It's a lynching of Thomas Shipp and Abraham Smith, shot by Lawrence Bettler in Indiana. How graphic do images need to be in order to prove a point, prove the story?
I don't think it's not a matter of being graphic, it's a matter of telling the truth. And this happened. I think photographing it from the other side where you couldn't see their faces would be less graphic.
Do you think it would still have the same
I think it has
impact?
more impact being able to see their faces and the faces of the crowd.
This is the impact of this photo is not just what's happening there. It's very surreal. You look at the faces of the crowd. It's as if they're there on a picnic. And that's what is very disturbing about this photo. And you think, when, this was, well, 1930, I believe?
Yes.
And you think this was on this night accepted? It was Illinois, I believe, Illinois when that took place. That's even more disturbing. It's a very disturbing, they raided the jail, they got those guys out of there, and hung them on a tree. I mean, that's disturbing enough. And then you have this image where you see the faces of these people. They're like, it's just here we are. I mean, like, it's just bizarre to me. That's foreign to anything I've ever known in my life.
Now, this photo was put on postcards and sold millions. How do you guys feel about that?
Oh, that's just that's horrible.
It's horrible.
It's disgusting. Keep in mind, this was at a time in our country when black people, people from Asia could not buy property. I happen to have bought at a paper show a deed from my dad's hometown in Indiana, and it said, you may not sell to anyone, and they had all this long list of names, and it was right around the same time frame. So you have to put it in context as well of what was going on in that part of the country, because on the
But this was not the South either.
No,
this was Illinois.
This was in the Midwest.
Yeah.
So on the two coasts, we're a bit more progressive in our thinking.
Yeah.
But it still looks like something from the 1850s.
It's very disturbing.
We've been saying the image is in Illinois, but actually it's in Indiana. Our next image is by Dorothea Lange in 1936 of a mother and her kids living in poverty. Do you think that that this image had a huge impact on the Great Depression? Just seeing this image alone. Do you think?
We weren't there, but I think it did because it's a fantastic image. There were so many images. If you can go into the archives online and find the images from the Dust Bowl. The administration, a lot of photographers took some great images. There's another one of the guy walking through the dust holding his hat, that comes to mind. But this has staying power because it's just such a great image. I mean, there are images through the years that a different photographer could have photographed this event and it wouldn't have the power this image has. Whether or not it made a change at the time, I'm not sure. Like I say, I wasn't there. But it may have. I don't know. I know over it's become the icon of the Dust Bowl Depression era, and it's a fantastic image.
It's just so powerful. The expression on her face, the lines,
the kids, everything. It's all there.
The kids, the black and white. It almost feels like you could read her mind, as if she's just does not know what she is going to do tomorrow to stay alive.
She nailed it on that shot.
Yeah.
So you think that it's okay for journalists to take shots of families in despair if it's going to prove a point?
In this case, yes, because we're not dealing with a dead body.
Right.
Although it is a private moment, I would presume.
Right. It's touchy. We just ran a series on homeless in the Valley, actually, just last weekend. And I was out in the streets dealing with homeless families, homeless people, and I always ask permission for something like that. You can't intrude on somebody's life with a camera without having their permission. And she had been, I know in this image, she had been, there's other images of this as well, and she had her permission to take the pictures at that time. I know she did. So that's just the way I work. I'm not a person that shoots and runs. I like people to know why I was there and what the reason for me being there is. I think that's important.
And that's really no different than a reporter calling up and identifying themselves, saying what media organization they work for, rather than just calling up and starting to ask questions and then putting that information into a story.
Correct.
So do you think this picture makes Americans see the Depression in a different perspective?
Yes. definitely, because of the desperation that is on her face. Anytime you can take a concept like the Depression and humanize it, then it's going to touch people's hearts.
Yeah, it's summed up in one image there.
All right, we're gonna go ahead and go to the Nagasaki mushroom cloud image that was taken by military photographers in Japan. If someone were to look at this image and not know the story, what kind of perspective would they get from it?
Well, that's cool. That looks cool. But the image that stands out to me from that is the little girl sitting in the rubble, that at Hiroshima, I believe it is, at the center of the city. There's a little girl sitting in a rubble, or maybe a train station. You know, that tells the story of what happened there. This is, you know, who knows? That could almost, you know, it almost takes on an artistic, could be underwater photography of, who knows? It's, you know.
You can't tell how destructive,
there's no
and
destructive in it.
horrible and negative it is by that
Right.
photo.
That's right.
So why do you think they chose this photo instead of choosing a photo that shows destruction? Rather, I mean, there were millions of pictures, but I'm just saying, like, this one was a really popular picture.
This shows America's power,
Yeah.
and this is what won the war.
At the atomic age, you know.
That
was it.
Yeah.
And yeah.
We're gonna go ahead and go to a picture about a Saigon. It's called Saigon execution. But looking at this picture, do you see both sides of the story? Because there's more to this story than the picture shows.
Yeah.
That's one thing with photos, is that you, as the viewer, can misinterpret if you don't really know
Right.
the full story. You're
Right.
getting a split-second image, and you're making assumptions that perhaps this man deserved to die.
Well, yeah, and not only that, is there's video of this entire sequence of events that happened, which I've seen, and it doesn't have anywhere near the power of this. They're going around rousting up all kinds of people and killing them on the streets there in that day. And this is just one moment from that. You know, it's the horror of war. It's just a striking, moving image. Like, when does society come to a point where you can point a gun at a person's head in the street and pull the trigger? I mean, that's horrific. And I think that, to me, what's always struck me about this image in particular is the power of a still image over video. Because the video, it happens so fast. It's like, oh, what was that? And you're not really sure what you saw. But this, it just sticks in your brain forever.
It does, and you can sit with it and analyze it. The fact that this was a police chief
Right.
executing a prisoner,
Right.
but I can't tell that he's a police chief.
No, well, because he's wearing camo,
Yeah.
you know. It's true.
As a photographer, David, how would you get the second side of the story? Because you're only seeing.
Well, that's really tricky, because, you know, there's no photographer in the world that doesn't have a point of view. You have a point of view, and it's often what's outside the frame, not what's inside the frame. And there was a case in point just recently that came up at a Donald Trump, when he complained about an AP photographer,
Right.
because he went to the back of the room, shot the back of the room, he saw empty chairs, and Trump said, that's not really what happened, that's not what was there. But there are other pictures from that event that show that, yeah, there were empty chairs in the back of the room. You know, but there are other pictures shot with a telephoto lens that looks like, oh, he's surrounded by people. So that's where, you know, that's where the journalist comes into play, to be able to put all sides of the image or the story out there, and that's critical. That's why I feel like, especially nowadays, we're losing so many journalists, and you got people out there with cell phones, and they're very one-pointed. I mean, as a journalist, you make it a point to really try to show both sides of the story. I mean, you're trained to do that. People with cell phones, you know, putting stuff on Twitter or what have you, they just, oh, that's cool, and they throw it up without any regard that that's not, well, there was this happening too.
And there's no story to go along with
That's
it
right.
when it's just a
That's correct.
photo on Twitter, and the story is not written by
Yeah, and the
trained
story comes from the
journalists.
person that took the picture from their point of view.
How do you think this picture changed the views of the war, actually? Did America think, oh, we're actually siding with the wrong people?
Well, you're talking, because I was a kid. I'm like 10 or 9 or something like that was taken. So I wasn't in that time, but I could tell you what happened, what it felt like at that point. But historically, looking back, this is one of the icons of the Vietnam War, and what a disaster it was that we were ever involved in the whole mess. So.
And it was the beginning of the Tet Offensive. This photo was taken on February 1st, 1968. And we were involved in Vietnam for another 5 years. Sometimes it takes a while for these seeds are planted, and I think this was a seed that was planted in America's mind. And then the other seed later on was the Napalm Girl.
Yeah.
And 14 months later, after the Napalm Girl photo, we were out of Vietnam. It definitely had an impact.
And at one point here, that Vietnam was great for journalists because journalists had free access to go anywhere in that war. And you'll notice that in following years, like you look at Gulf War and other things, they were the militaries, we're not going to have another Vietnam.
Yep.
And they made sure that you had to be embedded as a journalist. Yep. You had to get their perspective. They wanted to be very controlling, so they didn't have this kind of stuff coming out. And it changed. I mean, it changed a lot because of that, because it was journalists that I think, and journalism that brought an end to the Vietnam War. Because America saw what was going on.
And this was the first time for TV that we had war
on the nightly news.
In our living room.
In your face, on the nightly news every night.
Yep.
We're going to go ahead and look at a picture of a white man attacking a black civil rights activist with a flagpole. Is the only reason why this photo is important is because of the flagpole? Because there are so many photos that have to do with civil rights movement, but does the flag being in the photo have a stronger impact?
Well, I mean, it's symbolic. Here's America, and you got a guy poking the flag at another gentleman. I mean, it's symbolic. If it was just a pole, probably not. It would still be if he was just had a pole in his hand, it would still have a great deal of impact, I think. But the flag adds another element to the picture, which adds another piece of information there. I mean, this isn't happening in Germany by that picture, because the flag's there. So yeah, it does add to the.
And
to the
you're
photo.
not supposed to be doing that. By the way, that white teenager, Joseph Rakes, he got 2 years in prison and 2 years probation for this, but his jail sentence was suspended. He caught some flack. He was known as the Flag Kid, and he was accused of murder. The charges were dropped, and there was a real stigma, but he eventually did turn his life around. I wanted to point out something in that photo. It looks as though the African-American man, his hands are being held behind him, and this is where it comes into play. You have to explain this photo. That's not what is happening. The man behind, and I'm looking down here to make sure I get his name right, Ted Landsmark is the African-American lawyer and civil rights activist, and Jim Kelly is an anti-busing activist, and he is actually picking him up after he fell down and broke his nose. His glasses were on the ground, but it looks like he's holding him back so that he can be assaulted. And that part of the photo, it's a little deceptive.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was our last image we're going to discuss. I want to end the note on, with new media emerging and technology, how do you think photojournalism will change?
Oh, it's already changed. When I saw the iPhone 6S released with the Harry Potter effect, live view, I said, well, 5 years, still images will be done. We'll be shooting photojournalists will be shooting video. Editors will be pulling the actual image, and then they'll take the second before and the second after, because everybody's going to want that live view effect.
So
especially online.
Will there be a need for photojournalists
well,
still?
it'll be different. I mean, I've seen that, like, think about sports with that effect. You're watching the touchdown, catch the touchdown catch, and then you get the second before, second after. With everything, it's going to change everything, I'm afraid. And like I've said before, I think there's a certain power to a still image, and that's kind of going to be erased, I think, a little bit, or I don't know.
Anything you wanted to add to that, Stephanie?
Well, the gatekeeper has already
That's true too.
been removed.
Yep.
Now that anyone from a grandma, a great-grandma to a child can post something online. They don't need the permission of the Daily News.
That's right.
Or Time Magazine in order to make an image available to the masses. It's out there.
Out it goes.
Well, thank you guys so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Great, thank you for having us.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move. So I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
We taught him how to hit a baseball, how to hit a receiver, the strike zone, the net. You taught him how to hit the upper corner. You even taught him how to hit the open man. But how much time have you spent teaching him what not to hit?
Hey, Hard, what's this?
That's my resignation letter.
You're resigning.
Why? Because you're constantly ignoring me. You're half as active as you used to be, and you get stuff like this. You've been putting me under a lot of pressure lately. That's why I'm ready to quit.
I forgot. I'll do better. Please, don't quit on me.
Okay, but remember, it's not what you say, it's what you do.
Listen to your heart. Don't let it quit on you.
Let's go for a walk.
Uncontrolled high blood pressure could lead to a stroke, heart attack, or death. Get yours to a healthy range before it's too late.
Do you know what to do?
Yes.
Bring it back to me. Then I'll give you your money.
Frank Thomas, you are under arrest for the theft of trade secrets. Come with me.
Bye-bye, Frank. Theft of trade secrets is illegal.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
Thank you for watching On Point. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter at CSUN On Point. Sunday mornings, look for us on LA Channel 36 at 11:30 and tune in to KCSN on 88.5 FM at 5:30 in the morning to listen each week. For all of us here at On Point, I'm Mirna Duron, and we'll see you next week.